Immanuel Kant is one of the most influential philosophers in Western thought. His project, which he called Transcendental Idealism, was an attempt to bring together two earlier traditions, rationalism and empiricism, both of which, in his view, had reached dead ends. The rationalists, such as Descartes and Leibniz, argued that knowledge comes from reason alone, but this led to extreme doubt. Descartes' cogito, I think therefore I am, left him isolated in the mind, struggling to prove that an external world even exists. The empiricists, such as Locke and Hume, argued that all knowledge comes from experience, but this led to a different kind of scepticism. Hume, for instance, claimed that we never observe a necessary connection between cause and effect. We simply get used to one event following another and call it causation. Kant saw this as a crisis. If rationalism and empiricism both ended in scepticism, philosophy needed a new foundation. His solution began with a simple but revolutionary question. What makes experience and knowledge possible in the first place? Kant started by examining what it means to have an experience of anything at all. Experience, he said, is not just a collection of sensations. It already has structure and order. When you perceive something, say a tree blowing in the wind, you automatically experience it as existing in space and changing over time. Without space, you couldn't perceive shape or distance. Without time, you couldn't perceive movement or change. So, Kant argued, space and time are not properties of the external world, but forms of intuition. They are ways in which the mind organises sensory data. In other words, space and time are a priori conditions for experience. They exist in us before experience and make experience possible. To put it simply, our minds don't just receive the world, they shape it. We can't step outside space and time to see things as they really are, because these are the very lenses through which we perceive everything. But space and time alone are not enough. To make sense of experience, the mind must also apply certain concepts, which Kant called categories. These are basic concepts, such as unity, plurality, substance, and causation, that structure all our thoughts about the world. Without them, we would be unable to experience the world as we do. Causation, in particular, answers Hume's scepticism. Hume said that causality is just a habit of thought, a psychological expectation. Kant replied that causation is actually a condition for having experience at all. Here is an example. When you look around a room, you can choose the order in which you see things, the table, then the window, then the chair. But when you watch a ship sail down a river, the sequence of its movement is not up to you. It unfolds in a fixed order determined by something external. The very fact you can distinguish between events you determine and events that are determined for you shows that your mind applies the concept of cause and effect to organise your experience. Without causation, you couldn't distinguish between your own actions and the external world. This insight is part of what Kant calls his transcendental deduction, the argument that certain concepts, like causality, must exist a priori in the mind for experience to be possible. From here, Kant makes a key distinction between two kinds of reality, the phenomenal and the noumenal worlds. The phenomenal world is the world of appearances, the world as we experience it, structured by space, time, and the categories. The noumenal world is the world as it exists in itself, beyond our perception. We can never know the thing in itself, what reality is apart from our ways of experiencing it, because our minds always filter reality through space, time, and the categories. But Kant thought this doesn't lead to despair. Even if we can't know things as they are in themselves, we can still have objective knowledge of the world as it appears to us, because the structures that make experience possible are shared by all rational beings. So, unlike Descartes, Kant thought we could be confident that an external world exists. We just can't know it independently of our minds. Kant's system also offered a new way to think about how knowledge works. Traditionally, philosophers divided knowledge into analytic knowledge, true by definition, like all triangles have three sides, and synthetic, based on experience, like the triangle on the board is blue. They also divided it into a priori, known before experience, and a posteriori, known after experience. Kant combined these distinctions to propose a new type of knowledge, synthetic a priori knowledge. This kind of knowledge is both necessary and informative. It begins with experience, but depends on conditions that precede experience, like space, time, and the categories, to make sense of it. For example, mathematics is synthetic a priori. The truth of 7 plus 5 equals 12 is not analytic. The number 12 is not contained in the ideas of 7 and 5, yet it's not dependent on particular experiences either. It's a necessary truth grounded in how our minds structure experience in this way. Kant tried to synthesize rationalism and empiricism. Knowledge begins with experience, but is made possible by a priori structures of the mind. Kant's work is sometimes called a Copernican revolution in philosophy. Just as Copernicus explained the solar system by showing that the Earth moves around the Sun in a way that completely revolutionized astronomy, Kant explained knowledge by showing that the mind organizes reality rather than passively receiving it, thus revolutionizing 2,000 years of philosophy. Instead of asking how our knowledge conforms to the world, Kant asked how the world conforms to our way of knowing. By doing this, Kant overcame Descartes' skepticism, Locke's representationalism, and Hume's skepticism. He showed that we can have certain knowledge, but only of the world as it appears to us, never of things as they are in themselves.